this is a story about gardening. My first garden experience involved someone else's vegetables. Thelma, my mother-in-law at the time, was a country woman who put in a good-sized garden every year, and she ate or canned all of the food she grew. It was a huge and wonderful garden, and I, in my 23-year-old naivete, had no idea how much work it entailed. My new husband was between jobs that summer, so he worked for his father in the family dry goods store, and we lived with his parents. I have no idea what I did that summer. Did I sit around and read while Thelma worked? Sounds plausible, if embarrassing to admit. My parents-in-law left us to care for the house for a week while they attended a church camp in the East Tennessee mountains up near Suwanee. Our sole chore while they were gone was to tend the garden, to water every day, and to gather in the tomatoes as they ripened. I think Thelma was canny enough to know that it would be futile to ask me to do anything more than that. So every morning my husband went to the dry goods store in the town down the road, and I stayed in his tiny hometown and played house, which probably involved a little cooking and a lot of reading. Each morning before work, he watered the garden. My task was to harvest the ripe tomatoes. The garden was huge. The tomatoes planted in 3 rows, each 50 feet long, and that's a lot of tomato plants. And because the garden was watered every morning, the soil between the rows was always muddy. So here's how a city girl tended those tomatoes. I would go outside every morning, stand at the head of a row, contemplate the mud, and imagine the effect it would have on my cute little sandals or on my bare feet if I had been brave enough to squish my way through the wet grass without shoes. I stood at the top of a row and I peered at the tomato plants. Bending over, first to the left, then to the right, I would look at all the plants I could see from my position there at the top of the row. Peer, peer. If I saw a bit of red within reach on one of the first 3 plants of the row, say, I would certainly tiptoe through the mud to pluck that ripe tomato. But the rest of the row looked all green to me. I am now aware that any ripe fruit was hiding behind the flourishing green leaves, as tomatoes like to do, but how could I know that, being young, being determinedly citified? I saw no red tomatoes at all. I did wonder a bit that only the first 3 plants in each row were bearing ripe fruit, but I wasn't too eager to follow up on that thought, since it might have involved walking through the muddy path between the rows. The thought died on the vine, so to speak. When my husband's parents returned a week later, Thelma found more than the usual number of very ripe tomatoes on her vines, along with quite a few rotten or exploded tomatoes on the ground. I don't remember that she scolded me or even made any reference to my ineptitude, but she certainly never again left me alone with the garden.